This is Robert Harper with Virginia Farm Bureau's Grain Division. Glad to bring you the Merchandiser Minute for Friday, February the 14th, 2020. It was great to see some of you all this week at the Virginia State Feed Association annual meeting. It was a great group of farmers and end users there talking about these markets. And let's take a look at how the futures did this week in Chicago. March corn closed down 6 cents a bushel for the week to close at $3.77. March soybeans closed up 10 cents a bushel for the week to close at $8.93. And the nearby wheat contract, March wheat, closed this week at $5.42, down 16 cents a bushel for the week as the speculators seem to want to get out of some of their long contracts. When we think about that and talk about the managed money speculator, today's Commitment of Traders report shows the wheat speculator still long. Our 45,000 futures contracts, net long in Chicago. They're short both corn and beans with a growing short corn position at 72,000 futures contracts and beans coming in short at 92,000 futures contracts. So what is that telling us? In the wheat world, they're betting the price is going to go higher before it goes lower. And in the corn and soybean world, they're betting on the price going lower before it goes higher. If you'd like to talk more about that Commitment of Traders report and those managed money participants, please give me or Josie a call about that. When we look at the USDA this week, we know we got our monthly crop production report and World Ag Supply and Demand report this week. And y'all can take a look at all those numbers. I know you have already that came out at noon on Tuesday. I think one way of looking at it is there were only offsetting adjustments. As we look at corn, wheat, and bean numbers in that report, there were offsetting adjustments in those numbers this month from the USDA and the World Ag Board that really were seen as neutral by the managed money speculator in Chicago. They gave us updates on South American production, updates on carryout numbers, how many bushels are going to be left over at the end of the marketing year here in the United States, and world carryout numbers. Remember, the marketing year for corn and beans starts on September the 1st and runs until August the 31st. So I heard one analyst put it pretty cool this week in reference to corn and beans. They said the crop production report was sharply neutral. One thing to mention before we move on is USDA was clear to tell the world that they did not make any adjustments to carryout numbers in this month's report on the Phase 1 trade deal with China. They said they simply would just be guessing. And that brings to mind that, remember, tonight at midnight when the calendar flips over to February 15th, China will be on the clock to purchase those roughly $40 billion worth of agricultural products between now and the end of the calendar year. The deal goes into effect today. Export inspections on Monday came in as expected for corn and wheat. The vessels that got loaded for beans came in below expectation. When we look at the export sales report, we had another great, really our fifth great week in a row of corn export sales. Top customer, again, our neighbor to the south, Mexico. Wheat and beans came in as expected. Our top bean customer, China. Our top wheat customer, Mexico. So think about something when you look at all these numbers that float around in a tariff-free environment. U.S. beans are a little bit cheaper out of the Pacific Northwest, out of Seattle. They're just slightly cheaper per metric ton than beans coming out of Brazil in a tariff-free environment. We know our tariff does get reduced. It's part of this Phase 1 deal. We're going from 30% tariff to 27.5% tomorrow. So we really just got to keep working on getting these tariffs gone so our beans will be so competitive going into China. The USDA also told us this week, when you put the numbers together, that China has now purchased 12 million metric tons. Pretty sure I'm doing the math right there. Y'all can back me up on that. Call me about it if you got a question. But looking at the USDA numbers, China has purchased 12 million metric tons of beans from us already this marketing year, and that's not nearly where they normally were 2007 through 2017. But y'all, that's 3 times ahead of where they were a year ago. So that's good news, right? That's really good news. Some eye catchers this week. We saw Brazil's currency continue to be devalued and their farmers selling a lot of bushels. It's hard for soybeans to rally when the Brazilian real has fallen like it has. Y'all know the story. It's everywhere. There are a lot of folks in China and or even around the world now dealing with coronavirus and just a lot of ripple effects in economies now all over the world. There's stranded vessels waiting to get unloaded at ports in China. We even heard this week of a U.S. poultry shipment headed for China that had to get diverted. So really keep your eye close on that in the coming weeks, and it is going to make a big impact in some way on the Phase 1 trade deal. We also saw this week that China bought more Ukrainian corn. Keep your eye on that. We obviously know every metric ton or every bushel they buy from them is one less they'll be buying from us. It's always worth to mention the Dow and our other equity markets. The Dow closed at a new all-time high this year, this week, 29,524. That's all about money flow. Remember this week some really interesting, and I don't even mind using the word strange, some strange spread action is going on in the corn market. Goldman was doing their roll this week. That might have had something to do with that, but take a look on your quote screen at the corn futures contracts and look at what those spreads are doing between those contracts. Remember, we have to all get out of anything March, whether it's corn, wheat, or beans, by the end of the month. So be thinking about that next week. We hope to see a lot of you at the Virginia Grain Association annual meeting, Virginia Soybean Association annual meeting next week in Richmond. We also have the USDA Outlook Forum next week in Arlington, Virginia. There'll be a lot of numbers coming out from USDA that could have some impact on futures price. Remember to be talking to your crop insurance agent. Keep that March 15th deadline in front of you. Give us a call about basis. We'd be glad to help you. This is Robert at Virginia Farm Bureau's Grain Division.